They thought they were untouchable. For decades, cartel leaders operated with a sense of impunity, moving narcotics, buying weapons, corrupting officials, and even deploying their own fleets of armed drones. But that sense of invincibility has now been broken. A quiet shift in U.S. strategy has introduced a new generation of technology, surveillance power, and military force that is leaving cartel commanders reeling. This dramatic change began with a secret directive, and it has fundamentally altered the balance of power, proving that their old playbook is now obsolete. The U.S. is no longer confined to training and intelligence support. U.S. armed drones are hunting cartel targets directly. That single shift has tilted the balance of power in a way that the cartels cannot match. The most jarring development has been the deployment of military-grade drones, systems the cartels cannot compete with. Unlike the cheap commercial drones that cartels use, these Pentagon-operated platforms carry advanced sensors, real-time reconnaissance links, and precision-guided strike options. Imagine a convoy of cartel trucks moving at night through a remote mountain pass. In the past, they had a decent chance of slipping by. Today, the sky itself is their enemy. High-altitude drones track them from hundreds of miles away using heat signatures and encrypted communications intercepts. A single drone can track convoys, monitor boats along rivers, or watch stash houses. This is a net so fine that cartel operatives often do not realize they are being hunted until their vehicles or boats are disabled mid-mission. Cartel commanders can no longer rely on terrain, speed, or stealth. They are outclassed. One U.S. defense analyst put it bluntly: cartel drones are toys compared to what the Pentagon has now authorized for use. The cartels built their power on fear, but now they are the ones being hunted by machines they can't outrun or outgun. But the crackdown doesn't stop with drones. Surveillance has expanded massively. Alongside Predator-style systems, the U.S. has rolled out U-135 aircraft, P-8 Poseidon patrol planes, and a fleet of Navy warships positioned strategically across the Caribbean and Latin America. Why does that matter? Because cartels have long depended on the ocean, using small, go-fast boats and semi-submersibles as their highway for moving narcotics north. Now, with Poseidon sweeping the seas and U.S. Marines coordinating interdictions, that lifeline is collapsing. Every turn of their vessel is tracked, every movement recorded, and before they can slip into coastal waters, the U.S. military is there, ready to stop them cold. This early interception doesn't just block shipments, it dismantles the infrastructure of trafficking itself. Each interdiction removes not just the cargo, but also weakens the network of pilots, captains, and coordinators who risk their lives. Cartel leaders once mocked American slow interdiction tactics. Today, their own boat captains are panicking as advanced sensors lock onto them before they even hit open waters. And here is a game-changing twist.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
The Pentagon isn't just deploying lethal force. Engineers are actively developing non-lethal directed energy weapons designed to disable cartel boats without firing a single bullet. This is a tactical revolution. These systems can jam engines or immobilize vessels. Traffickers are stopped in their tracks, arrested, and stripped of their assets without escalating into bloody firefights. This surgical disruption minimizes collateral damage while neutralizing smugglers before violence escalates. A small crew on a boat has no chance against a directed energy system that renders their engines useless. It's a controlled, precise method that elevates both efficiency and humanity in interdiction operations. Military might is only half of the story. The DEA has launched a parallel strategy, one built on intelligence and partnerships. The agency announced a sweeping bilateral initiative, fusing Mexican and U.S. data streams to identify cartel leadership and map out their networks. This is not just wiretaps and undercover buys anymore. Think predictive algorithms that can trace financial flows, AI systems analyzing communication chatter, and real-time heat maps of cartel movements across states and borders. By targeting gatekeepers, the logisticians, accountants, and coordinators who keep the operations moving, the DEA is systematically dismantling the organizational backbone. What shocks cartel bosses the most isn't the killing power of a drone. It's the invisible hand that suddenly severs their ability to pay, to communicate, and to move their product. Leaders are being cut off from their lieutenants, their cash stockpiles frozen, and their smuggling corridors monitored before a single truck departs. Every phone call might be intercepted, and every night Sky might hide an aircraft relaying coordinates. Behind the headlines, another layer has emerged: covert CIA operations. Working hand in hand with Mexican special units, CIA operatives have used upgraded surveillance gear, satellite imagery, and encrypted tactical communications to hunt high-profile targets. In just a few months, joint missions have captured figures once thought untouchable. Cartel bosses who surrounded themselves with private armies and underground bunkers are now being dragged into custody because technology stripped away their last defenses. This isn't just a policing strategy. It's psychological warfare. Leaders who once projected invincibility now face an unseen enemy that watches, waits, and then strikes with precision. That collapse of fearlessness is a powerful tool. For decades, cartels adapted faster than governments. When law enforcement tightened one route, traffickers opened another. When one leader fell, another rose. But this technological surge has created a bottleneck. Cartel drones, once their proud innovation, are now countered and jammed by superior US systems. Boat routes are disrupted by non-lethal naval weapons. Hidden airstrips are exposed by high-altitude surveillance. Communications, once thought secure, are penetrated by intelligence fusion centers. Even their own cyber efforts are being intercepted. In July 2025, FBI disclosures revealed a cartel espionage campaign had been quietly neutralized by new US monitoring systems, turning their cyber advantage into a glaring weakness. The balance has shifted so sharply that cartel leaders are reportedly issuing internal orders to avoid movement, reduce communications, and cut back on flashy displays of power. Fear is now inside their ranks. This isn't theory. It's validated by real operations. CNN reported that the US military deployed significant assets into the Caribbean and Latin America specifically for interdiction missions. Defense Scoop revealed the Department of Defense is accelerating the fielding of non-lethal boat-disabling weapons. The DEA publicly launched a bilateral initiative to dismantle cartel gatekeepers, targeting leadership rather than just shipments. Reuters investigated the CIA's expanded role in fighting cartel operations in Mexico, and Al Jazeera covered reports of the US weighing targeted strikes against cartels.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
Each of these sources validates one truth. The war on narcotics is no longer reactive. It's proactive, powered by intelligence, surveillance, and specialized technology. The US is not acting alone. Latin American governments, some reluctant and some eager, are finding themselves pulled into the new framework. Warships in Venezuelan waters, F-35 patrols across the Caribbean, and joint task forces with Colombia have expanded the scope. For citizens who have lived under cartel violence, these changes are profound. Communities once dominated by cartel checkpoints are now seeing US-backed patrols. Interdictions at sea prevent narcotics from reaching local markets. But there is also unease. Critics argue that deploying Pentagon assets against non-state actors risks creating a dirty war scenario. The line between law enforcement and military engagement is blurred, and Latin American populations worry about sovereignty. Still, the scale of cartel disruption is undeniable. The most underestimated aspect of this crackdown isn't hardware, it's psychology. Cartels have always thrived on image. Convoys of armored trucks, festivals funded by narco money, propaganda videos of drone strikes against rivals. That image is crumbling. Every time a cartel drone is swatted out of the sky by US tech, the myth of invincibility takes a hit. Every time a protected leader is captured alive, the aura of untouchability fades, and every time a smuggling route is cut off by non-lethal interdiction, cartel members are reminded they are prey, not predators. A society terrorized by cartels begins to see hope when technology makes them vulnerable. For viewers, this is a historic turning point, and the cartels are showing they are stunned. They are behaving as if they are under siege. These groups, once known for dictating the pace of conflict, are now responding in ways that signal real fear, disruption, and adaptation. Reports confirm cartel leaders have authorized something previously unthinkable: direct, open fire on U.S. forces. That order alone represents a seismic departure from past cartel behavior. Authorizing attacks against American personnel means the cartels are treating the U.S. as a military adversary, not just a distant enforcer. One cartel leader, El Mencho, is specifically linked to preparing his fighters with high-caliber weapons and even rocket-propelled grenades. That move shows recognition that traditional small arms ambushes won't work against U.S. surveillance, strike aircraft, or covert raids. Border Patrol agents have also faced direct gunfire from cartel operatives near the frontier, a dangerous sign that cartels are willing to test American resolve on U.S. soil. These are tactical signals. We are ready to confront you head-on. When groups that profit most by avoiding state-level wars begin provoking a superpower's troops, something fundamental has changed. Intelligence assessments point to one chilling answer: adaptation. Cartels are not just escalating firepower, they are upgrading their talent pool. Reports reveal they are actively recruiting Colombian mercenaries, many of whom bring experience from decades of insurgent conflict and fresh battlefield exposure from the Russia-Ukraine war. That is an extraordinary tactical leap. Suddenly bringing in hardened combat veterans signals a leap toward professionalization. And the weapons of war are no longer confined to rifles and grenades. Drone warfare, once a tool of national militaries, is now a cartel staple. The evidence is undeniable. Cartel-linked drones have dropped bombs on municipal buildings and terrorized civilians. Intelligence shows these tactics are spreading, and in direct response to the pressure from U.S. forces, drones are becoming central to cartel defense and attack planning. For the first time, organized crime groups are systematizing airborne precision strikes as part of their survival strategy. And yet, despite authorizing direct confrontation, these groups are also showing restraint. Analysts note that cartels are deliberately avoiding spectacular attacks on U.S. soil because they know what overwhelming retaliation would look like. They are threading a dangerous needle. Fight back just enough to deter raids, but not so much as to provoke total annihilation. This balancing act is perhaps the most telling evidence that the cartels are not operating from a position of confidence. They are cornered animals, dangerous, desperate, but wary. Cartel leaders who once projected untouchable arrogance are now broadcasting orders soaked in anxiety. Arm up, prepare for raids, expect drones, expect betrayals. The shadow of U.S. action has destabilized the internal rhythm of these organizations. This constant pressure gnaws at morale, even among hardened killers. The very fact that these attacks are increasing reveals another truth. The cartels feel their dominance slipping. They must strike louder, harder, and more often just to remind people they are still in charge. In the long run, that's not a position of strength. It's the overcompensation of groups that feel the ground beneath them shaking. This isn't the Hollywood spectacle of open battle. The new U.S. weapons and technology upgrades are primarily intended for covert dominance across border zones and supply corridors rather than open confrontation. The focus is on intelligence-driven precision strikes, surveillance, and interdiction to dismantle cartel operations before they can move narcotics or weapons closer to or across the U.S. border. This is a shift from reaction to prevention. For decades, U.S. forces often reacted after narcotics had already crossed borders, but now the mission is to stop them far earlier. This shift is rooted in intelligence, precision, and deterrence. Instead of chasing shadows, forces now target the source and the roots, dismantling operations where they begin. The upgrades are tools for selective disruption, not spectacle. This is asymmetric warfare by another name. Where cartels use stealth to smuggle, the US now uses stealth to suffocate. The stakes here are enormous. Cartel supply corridors are not just highways for narcotics, they are arteries that also move weapons, money, and influence. Every truck that makes it through, every small boat that slips past, reinforces criminal power on both sides of the border. The US cannot afford to let those flows move unchecked, but neither can it afford to turn the border into a battlefield. That contradiction, needing to dominate without detonating, explains the very heart of the new weapons and technology upgrades. The absence of these capabilities would mean surrendering control of borders, lives, and futures. The quiet fear that things could spiral out of control justifies extraordinary measures. The upgrades are positioned as the thin line preventing collapse, and that framing makes the technology feel not optional, but necessary. The most underestimated tool in this fight is not the missile itself, but the fear it generates. Fear is contagious. A commander fearing elimination spreads tension downward. A recruit fearing exposure talks less, trusts less, and hesitates more. A financier fearing asset seizure reroutes funds clumsily, creating openings for authorities. Demonstrating firepower amplifies fear into dysfunction, and dysfunction breaks networks from within. The core of modern American demonstration is precision. Drones loiter until confirmation is absolute. Missiles guide to a single vehicle. This precision serves deterrence because it demonstrates control. Cartel operatives realize that the US doesn't need to carpet bomb to eliminate them. It can reach them individually, personally, surgically. That personal vulnerability strikes deeper fear than generalized force ever could. This technological leap could force cartels to abandon entire routes or territories they have held for decades. They have poured blood and fortune into defending these corridors, fortifying mountain trails, bribing officials, and burying rivals. But today, a new reality is breaking through. US surveillance and strike technology is changing the rules faster than cartels can adapt. This shift is so decisive that it could make entire territories simply not worth holding. When the cost of holding a corridor outweighs the profit it generates, even the most violent cartel is forced to make a choice: retreat, reroute, or perish. The technology that forces cartels out of their strongholds also drives them into bloodier, riskier battlefields. Instead of stable control, fragmentation emerges. Smaller factions carving out unstable territories, constantly fighting each other and law enforcement alike. The paradox is stark: less dominance, but more chaos. In the end, the consensus among analysts is clear. The new US weapons and technologies represent a historic escalation. They disrupt cartel operations, raise costs, and reduce freedom of movement. They allow law enforcement to strike first rather than scramble after the fact. But they are not a silver bullet. Cartels are too entrenched, too adaptable, and too embedded in the socio-economic fabric to be dismantled by technology alone. The question is not whether these tools are powerful. They are. The question is whether governments have the will to use them wisely, and whether societies have the patience to see the fight through to its conclusion. At its core, the demonstration of advanced American firepower is about destroying illusions. Illusions of safety, illusions of impunity, and illusions of control. By signaling overwhelming technological superiority, the US elevates risk perception, destabilizes morale, discourages recruitment, and reinforces multinational resolve. This is deterrence in its purest form, not through constant violence, but through the relentless reminder that decisive retaliation is always one step away. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.